My parents called me ungrateful, right after I paid off every single one of their bills. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Lena. I'm 28 and work as a nurse in Ohio. I've always been the type of person who takes care of everyone else. Growing up, my parents struggled a lot with money. My dad, Ray, jumped from job to job, and my mom, Carol, worked part-time at a grocery store. We never had much, but I learned to save every penny I earned. My younger brother, Chase, was the opposite. He never worked hard or took life seriously. While I studied and worked late shifts, he stayed out with friends, always saying things would work out somehow. When I finally started earning enough, I helped my parents with groceries and bills. I didn't mind. It felt right to give back. They'd always told me I was the responsible one, and I wanted to make them proud. Over time, their debts grew worse: credit cards, medical bills, and even their car loan. They never asked directly, but I could see the stress in their faces. I decided to do something big. I worked extra shifts for months. I skipped nights out with friends and lived on instant noodles just to save money. Finally, I cleared every single one of their debts. $42,000. I sent them the receipts, expecting at least a thank you or a hug. For a few days, things seemed calm. My mom said she felt like a weight had been lifted. My dad joked that I should manage their money from. I smiled, feeling proud and happy that I could finally give them some peace. Then, a few days later, everything changed. We were sitting down for dinner when my mom suddenly said, "You know, Lena, you've become a little full of yourself lately." I froze. My dad nodded, saying, "You act like paying our bills makes you better than us." Chase laughed and added, "Yeah, she just wants to brag about being the family hero." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My heart was pounding, and I didn't even know how to respond. I told them I didn't do it for praise. I did it because I loved them. But my mom just shook her head and said, "You're so ungrateful sometimes, Lena. Always trying to make us feel small." That word, ungrateful, hit me like a slap. I sat there in silence, trying to make sense of it. I had spent years helping them, sacrificing my own comfort, and now they saw me as someone who looked down on them. I quietly stood up, grabbed my coat, and left. As I drove home that night, I couldn't stop replaying their words. For the first time, I started to wonder if love and loyalty really meant the same thing to all of us. I grew up in a small house on the edge of town, where every dollar was stretched until it almost tore. My parents did what they could, but money was always short. Bills sat unopened on the counter, and arguments over spending filled most nights. My dad tried to make ends meet by taking side jobs, and my mom often skipped things she needed just to keep food on the table. Even as a kid, I understood that we were different from other families. My friends went on vacations or had new clothes for school, but I learned not to ask for things. I started saving coins in a jar from the time I was 10. It wasn't much, but it made me feel like I had some control in a house where everything felt uncertain. Chase, on the other hand, didn't worry about any of it. My parents always said he was still finding himself, which seemed to excuse everything he did. When I got a part-time job in high school, I used my paychecks to buy books and groceries. When Chase got one, he quit after a week because he didn't like the hours. My mom just smiled and said he'd figure it out one day. By the time I was old enough to leave for college, I already felt like I had been the adult of the house for years. I worked my way through school, sometimes studying in hospital cafeterias during night shifts. I told myself it was worth it because I'd be able to help them later. That thought kept me going. After graduation, I finally got a stable job and my first apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Even then, I couldn't stop worrying about them. I'd get late-night calls from my mom saying the power company was threatening to shut off the lights or that the car insurance was past due. I started sending money home every month without being asked. It became a habit, automatic, like paying rent. I'd cut back on things I wanted so I could cover what they couldn't. My dad always sounded grateful at first, but then I noticed a shift. He started assuming I'd handle things before even asking. My mom would mention a new expense in passing, her tone soft but expectant, like she already knew I'd step in. Meanwhile, Chase kept drifting. He bounced between jobs, slept late, and somehow still managed to be the favorite. My parents talked about his potential, about how he just needed one good break. I never got those kinds of excuses. When he messed up, they called it bad luck. When I struggled, they told me to try harder. Sometimes I'd wonder if they even noticed how tired I was. I didn't complain, but the weight of it all stayed on my shoulders. Every bill I paid felt like both a duty and a quiet reminder that love in my family came with a cost I was always expected to cover. One evening, after another long shift at the hospital, I stopped by my parents' house to drop off some groceries. While my mom was in the kitchen, I saw a stack of unopened envelopes on the counter. The red letters on them caught my eye: overdue notices, final warnings, and balance statements. My stomach tightened as I picked one up. The numbers were terrifying. They were deep in debt, far worse than I'd imagined. When I asked, my mom brushed it off, saying they were handling it. My dad avoided eye contact and changed the subject. But I knew the look of worry when I saw it. Late that night, I sat in my car outside their house, staring at those bills in my lap. The thought of them losing everything made me sick. They'd spent their whole lives fighting to stay afloat. I couldn't stand by and watch it all fall apart. I started working extra hours, sometimes double shifts, sometimes through the night. My body ached, my feet burned, and I barely slept. I lived on black coffee and energy bars. Every paycheck went straight toward their debts. Credit cards, medical bills, the car loan, all of it. I tracked every payment, every receipt, until one day the total reached zero. $42,000 gone, but it felt like freedom, at least for them. I imagined surprising them with the news. I thought they'd cry or hug me or finally say they were proud. When I handed them the cleared statements, my dad's eyes widened, and my mom gasped. For a moment, I thought it meant something. My dad said, "You really didn't have to do all that." And my mom murmured, "That's a lot, Lena." Then silence. No joy, no warmth, just an uncomfortable pause. I waited for something, anything, to show that they understood what I'd given up. Instead, my mom turned to Chase and asked about his new business idea. He started talking excitedly about buying used cars to flip for profit. My dad jumped in, saying how proud he was of Chase for taking initiative. I sat there, still holding the papers that proved their debts were gone, and listened to them praise him for a plan that hadn't even started. It was like what I'd done didn't matter. They didn't ask how I managed it, or if I was okay after working nonstop for months. The moment passed as if it was nothing more than a favor I was supposed to do. I smiled weakly and said I was happy to help, but inside something cracked. Driving home that night, I felt an emptiness I couldn't explain. I thought giving them peace would fill me with relief, but instead, it left me feeling small. I told myself it didn't matter, that love wasn't supposed to come with thanks. But a quiet thought kept echoing in the back of my mind. Maybe they never really saw me at all. Dinner that night was supposed to be simple, just the four of us around the same old table, eating together like we used to. My mom made pot roast, and my dad poured himself a beer. Chase was in one of his loud moods, talking nonstop about how his business was going to take off soon. I tried to smile and listen, even though every time he spoke about success, a knot twisted in my chest. At first, the conversation was normal. My dad asked how work was, and I said it had been busy. My mom mentioned a neighbor's daughter getting engaged, then sighed that she wished Chase would settle down soon. He grinned, saying he just needed a little more time. I stayed quiet, focusing on my plate. The air felt heavy, like something was waiting to happen. Then, out of nowhere, my mom set down her fork and said, "You know, Lena, you've been acting different lately, like you think you're above us." I looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" I asked. My dad leaned back and said, "All this talk about paying bills and helping us, sometimes it feels like you're rubbing it in." The words hit like a punch. "I wasn't trying to rub anything in," I said softly. "I just wanted to help." Chase laughed under his breath. "Come on, Lena, we all know you did it to make yourself look good. You love being the savior." I stared at him, speechless. "That's not true," I said, my voice shaking. "I never." My mom cut me off. "It's okay, we get it. You think we're irresponsible. You think you're better because you've got a degree and a steady paycheck." The room went silent except for the ticking clock on the wall. My throat burned. I looked from one face to the next, searching for any sign that they didn't mean it. None came. My dad just kept eating, Chase smirking like it was a joke, and my mom wouldn't even look at me. "I did all of it because I care," I said finally. "I wasn't trying to prove anything." My dad muttered, "Sometimes love doesn't come with a price tag." Chase chuckled again, saying, "Guess she missed that memo." That laugh broke something inside me. I couldn't finish my food. My hands were trembling, but I didn't want them to see it. I stood up slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm sorry if helping felt like showing off," I said quietly. "That was never my intention." No one stopped me as I grabbed my coat. No one asked where I was going. I stepped out into the cool night air, the porch light flickering above me. Behind the closed door, their voices blended into a dull murmur. As I walked to my car, the sound faded until all I could hear was the crunch of gravel under my shoes. In that silence, I understood something painful. Love, to them, wasn't sacrifice. It was obedience. And I'd just broken that rule. A few weeks passed after that dinner, and I tried to keep my distance. Work filled most of my days, and I avoided calls from home. I told myself I needed space, that things would cool down eventually. Then one afternoon, I came home to find a thick envelope in my mailbox from a bank I didn't recognize. It had my name on it, so I opened it without thinking. Inside was a loan statement, thousands of dollars owed, my name printed on every page. I froze, reading line after line, trying to make sense of it. The dates, the address, even my social security number. It was all mine. The only problem was I had never applied for a loan. My hands started shaking as I flipped through the pages. Late fees, missed payments, my credit score dropping fast. At first, I thought maybe it was a mistake. I called the bank, trying to sound calm. The woman on the phone told me the loan had been approved 2 months earlier, co-signed by Ray and Carol Halstead. My parents. I asked who filed the application, and she said the main contact number belonged to a man named Chase Halstead. My brother. I couldn't breathe for a moment. My own family had done this, used my identity, my trust, my name, to take out money. When I finally spoke, my voice cracked as I asked what the loan was for. The woman said it was listed under business startup expenses. That was all I needed to hear. I drove straight to my parents' house, the papers still in my hand. My mom opened the door with a smile that faded as soon as she saw my face. "What's wrong?" she asked. I held out the statement. "Can you explain this?" She hesitated, glancing toward the living room where my dad sat watching TV. "It's not what you think," she said quickly. My dad muted the screen and sighed. "Calm down, Lena. It's just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I said. "There's a loan in my name. My credit is ruined. How could that be a misunderstanding?" My dad rubbed his temples. "Chase needed a little help getting his business going. The bank wouldn't approve him a loan, so we used your information. We were going to tell you once he started making money." I stared at them, waiting for someone to say it was a joke. My mom stepped closer, her voice pleading. "He's your brother. We just wanted to give him a chance." I couldn't even look at her. "You stole from me," I said quietly. "You both signed my name. You let him do this." My dad's tone hardened. "We didn't steal. Families help each other. Don't make this bigger than it is." Before I could answer, Chase came down the hallway. "You found out," he said, half smiling. "Relax, I'll pay it back." I felt something in me snap. "You had no right," I whispered. "None of you did." For the first time in my life, I didn't see family standing in front of me. I saw strangers who had traded my trust for convenience and called it love. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with the bank papers spread out in front of me. The anger had cooled into something heavier, resolve. I spent hours on the phone confirming every detail, every forged signature. By the afternoon, I drove to the local police station. My voice barely wavered as I explained what happened, how my own family had opened a loan in my name without my consent. The officer listened carefully, then handed me a form. Signing it felt like crossing a line I could never step back over. When I left the station, the air felt strangely still. My phone buzzed the moment I started my car. First my mom, then Chase, then my dad. I didn't answer. By evening, they were waiting outside my apartment building. My mom's eyes were red, and my dad's jaw was tight. "How could you do this to us?" My mom cried as soon as I opened the door. "You called the police?" "We're family, Lena." I stood in the doorway, blocking them from coming inside. "Family doesn't steal identities," I said. "You left me no choice." My dad's voice rose. "You're blowing this out of proportion. We were just helping your brother get on his feet. You're acting like we're criminals." I met his eyes. "You are. You signed my name." For a moment, no one spoke. My mom covered her face, sobbing harder. "You'll ruin everything," she said between gasps. "They'll arrest Chase." "Is that what you want? Your own brother in jail?" I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say that would make them understand. My dad muttered something about betrayal and stormed off toward the car. My mom stayed behind, her voice trembling. "I thought you were better than this." After they left, I sank onto the couch, shaking. My phone kept lighting up, dozens of messages from Chase. The first few were defensive, then they turned cruel. "You're a snake. You think you're some kind of saint. You'll regret this." I stared at the screen until the words blurred. For years, I had been the one fixing their mistakes, paying for their peace. Every dollar, every favor, every long night had been to keep things from falling apart. Now that I'd stopped, the truth of what I'd been holding together was clear. It was never love holding us. It was dependence. I muted every notification, turned off the lights, and sat in the dark, letting the silence settle around me. It wasn't relief exactly, but it was something close, a quiet space where their voices couldn't reach. I knew what came next wouldn't be easy, but I wasn't backing down. For once, I wasn't the one apologizing. For once, I was standing up for myself, even if it meant standing alone. I spent the next few days in silence, moving through each task like a machine. There were no more arguments, no more explanations. I didn't text, didn't call, didn't try to fix anything. Instead, I made lists, everything with my name attached to there. Bank accounts, utilities, insurance, the house payments I'd been covering without question. One by one, I closed, froze, or transferred them. Every form I signed felt like cutting another thread that had tied me to them for years. I started with the joint account my parents used for bills. It had always been our safety net, but really, it was my paycheck keeping their lights on. I walked into the bank, withdrew what was mine, and told the teller to close it permanently. The woman looked surprised but didn't ask questions. When I walked out, the cold air felt cleaner somehow. Next came the creditors. I spent hours on hold, explaining that I was removing myself from all authorizations. Then I called the mortgage company and informed them I would no longer make payments on a property I didn't live in. The representative paused and asked if I was sure. I said yes firmly. For the first time, I meant it. I updated my documents, new address, new security codes, new password. I even changed my phone number. Every part of my life that they once had access to, I sealed off. I didn't tell them. I didn't warn them. I just disappeared from their financial reach. It wasn't spite. It was survival. Weeks passed without a word. The quiet felt strange at first, but it soon became comforting. I started putting money into a savings account with only my name on it. Watching the balance grow, untouched, was like breathing again after being underwater for too long. I worked, slept, and went for long walks after my shifts, letting the world feel steady again. Then, little by little, the consequences found them. Chase's business fell apart when his funding dried up. The loan payments stopped, and the bank began calling. My parents tried to cover it, but without the money I used to send, they couldn't keep up. Within months, the house went into foreclosure. I heard about it through a mutual neighbor, not from them. Part of me wanted to feel sorry, to reach out and help like before. But I didn't. I'd already given them everything once, and they used it to destroy the one thing that mattered, trust. So I stayed quiet. No gloating, no satisfaction, just a steady calm that came from knowing the balance had finally evened out. When I thought of them now, I didn't picture anger. I pictured distance. They had taught me what it meant to give without boundaries, and now I understood the cost. My revenge wasn't loud. It was the sound of a door closing gently for good. It was early evening when I heard the knock. Sharp, hurried, and familiar. Through the peephole, I saw my parents standing there, faces drawn, clothes wrinkled, eyes wild with anger and panic. For a moment, I froze. I hadn't seen them since the day I walked away from everything. My heart pounded, but my hands stayed steady as I opened the door just enough to face them. My mom started first. "Lena, you have to fix this," she said, her voice breaking. "They're taking the house. We're drowning, and it's your fault." My dad stood behind her, his face red. "You ruined us," he snapped. "You froze every account, you stopped paying, and now we have nothing." I leaned against the doorframe, silent. Their words washed over me, but I didn't flinch. My mom's voice rose higher, desperate now. "After everything we did for you, you turned your back on your own family." I looked at her and said quietly, "You called me ungrateful for helping you. What did you expect me to be after you stole from me?" For a second, she looked stunned, as if hearing the truth for the first time. My dad scoffed, shaking his head. "We made mistakes, but you went too far. You humiliated us. You've become cold." "Cold?" I repeated. "No. I finally stopped letting you burn me." My tone was calm, even. There was no anger left, just a kind of clarity that felt almost peaceful. My mom took a step closer, tears streaming down her face. "We're your parents," she whispered. "You don't turn away from family." "I did everything I could for years," I said softly. "And when I stopped, everything fell apart. That should tell you who was really holding it together." She reached out, but I stepped back. The hallway light flickered, and for a moment, none of us spoke. My dad muttered something under his breath about pride, about how money changes people. I didn't answer. I'd spent too long trying to explain myself to people who only heard what suited them. Finally, I said, "You made your choices. I made mine. I won't carry yours anymore." Their expressions shifted, from anger to something like disbelief. Maybe they had expected begging or tears or guilt, but there was none left to give. I'd poured it all out long ago. My mom whispered my name one last time, but I didn't move. I just said, "Goodbye," and gently closed the door. The latch clicked softly, final and firm. For a while, I stood there, listening to their footsteps fade down the hallway. The apartment was quiet again, just the hum of the fridge and the faint sound of traffic outside. I breathed in, slow and deep. The air felt lighter, as if something heavy had finally lifted. They had come to break me again, but instead, I realized I was free. Months passed without a word from them. Seasons changed, and the quiet settled into my life like a new kind of rhythm. Work filled my days, and the stillness of my evenings no longer felt empty. It felt earned. Then one morning, as I sifted through a pile of mail, I saw an envelope with my mother's handwriting on it. My name written in shaky pen strokes, the return address smudged. For a long time, I just stared at it. Part of me wanted to toss it straight into the trash, but my hands moved on their own. I sat down, slid a knife under the flap, and unfolded the letter. The The paper trembled as I opened it, though I couldn't tell if it was my hands or hers that had made it shake. It started awkwardly, like she wasn't sure how to begin. She wrote about the house being gone, about Chase disappearing for weeks, about how my dad barely spoke anymore. She said she'd been thinking about everything, about me, the bills, the accusations, the night on the porch. Every line felt uneven, rushed, heavy with regret. Then she said she was sorry, not in a polished way, but in a way that sounded raw, unpracticed. She said she finally understood what I had tried to do all along, that I had carried more than anyone should. She wrote that she missed me, that she wished she had told me she was proud before everything fell apart. By the time I reached the end, my eyes were burning, though I wasn't sure if it was from sadness or exhaustion. She ended the letter with one line: "You were never ungrateful." I just couldn't stand seeing what I wasn't brave enough to be. I read that line again and again until the words blurred. Then I folded the paper neatly, walked to the kitchen, and set it on the counter. The lighter sat nearby. I hesitated for only a moment before striking the flame. The corner caught quickly, curling into black. I watched as the fire crept across the page, shrinking the apology into ash. There was no anger in me, no thrill, no revenge. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when you realize you don't need the thing you've been waiting for all your life. I didn't need her words or her forgiveness or anyone's approval to feel whole. When the last ember faded, I opened the window and let the ashes drift into the cold air. Outside, the sun was beginning to rise, spilling light across the street. I stood there for a long time, breathing it in. For the first time in years, I wasn't holding on to anyone else's pain. The weight that had lived in my chest was gone. That morning, I made coffee, sat by the window, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long while: peace. It wasn't from them. It was mine. It's strange how quiet life becomes when the noise of guilt finally fades. I wake up before sunrise most days now, make my own breakfast, and leave the apartment feeling lighter. The world hasn't changed, but I have. There's no more waiting for a call, no checking messages with that twist in my stomach. The silence that used to sting has turned soft, almost peaceful. Sometimes on my way to work, I catch myself thinking about them. Not with anger, just a dull ache that fades as quickly as it comes. I used to replay every moment, wondering what I could have done differently, what words I should have said to make them see me. But there's no more what if. They made their choices, and I made mine. Some bridges burn quietly, and maybe that's the only way to cross them. The lesson came slowly, like water seeping through cracks. I learned that love isn't measured by how much you give or how much you lose for someone. It's about balance, respect, and choice. I gave everything I had to people who only knew how to take. And when I stopped, I saw what they really valued. It wasn't love, it was control dressed as care. I don't hate them. Hate takes energy, and I've spent enough of that already. What I feel now is distance, steady and clean. I hope they find peace, even if it's without me. Maybe one day they'll understand that what I did wasn't revenge, it was survival. My debts are gone, both the financial ones and the invisible kind I carried on my shoulders for years. I've started saving for myself. Small things at first, like a trip I always wanted to take or a new place to live. Each step forward feels like reclaiming another piece of who I am. Sometimes people at work ask about my family, and I just smile and say we're not close. It's enough. I don't owe anyone the story behind the scars. Those belong to me now. When I think about the word ungrateful, it doesn't sting anymore. Maybe I am ungrateful. Ungrateful for manipulation, for guilt, for being used in the name of love. Maybe that's the kind of ungrateful that saves you. I've stopped trying to fix what was never mine to fix. The weight I used to carry for them, the worry, the shame, the constant sense of owing something, it's gone. What's left is quiet strength, the kind that doesn't need proving. Tonight, as I sit by the window with the city lights below, I realize this isn't the ending I once imagined. It's better. The story didn't end with forgiveness or reconciliation. It ended with freedom. And that, I've learned, is its own kind of peace. Hey besties, thanks for staying with me till the end of this story. Imagine paying off every debt your parents had, only to be called ungrateful and betrayed by the very people you. It hurt, but it also opened my eyes. Sometimes walking away is the real victory. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, drop a comment, and subscribe for more. See you in the next one. Bye.